Okay, so I guess the starting point is we know many industries are, how should we put it, getting involved in the digitalization trend, digital transformation. The finance banking sector is very much one of those. And I guess we all have a bank account probably, so we all know roughly, but can you give me just some idea of the quantity and the rate of change that digitalization is bringing to your sector?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we as Commerzbank have a history of more than 150 years now. So there have been a lot of changes in the industry. And what I see, especially for the last decade or for the last 20 years, is that the customer has changed, the customer behavior has changed, and the technology has changed. So 20 years ago, there was no smartphone. So there was not the expectation to have something on that is working in a smartphone app, but everybody was used to go into the branches. I mean, online banking, of course, was an alternative, but especially with the smartphones, there was a big change. And another thing changed. So with PSD2, so the regulatories for banks to open up via secure APIs, the control changed. So now the customer has the power to decide on the app that he wants to use, right? So he can decide on where he wants to see his bank account data integrated in. And that is, of course, something that changes a lot because we as a bank have now to work hard on making the customer happy to use our app. And of course, we see a lot of new players on the market. I mean, with a new technology, it's quite easy to build a finance app and to integrate bank account data and then concentrate on a specific use case in order to generate high margins. I mean, that is what I see is happening on the fintech market, even though there's currently happening consolidation of the market, or it seems like. But that is something we have, what was for us the reason to open up as a bank via APIs to take care of all those different needs, right?
Okay, so I mean, if I perhaps try and summarize that, you're basically saying that you need, in this sort of modern digital age, to be more open and responsive to customers and your partners, and what we might call the traditional approach to IT has now, you've sort of decided to make a step change to look to use API powered architectures. Is that it? Yeah,
I mean, of course. I mean, that is more like an architectural decision, right? Because with APIs, you decide to have, when you decide to have RESTful APIs, so APIs that are understandable, documentation is understandable, it's in English. I mean, something, of course, that accelerates us with digital technology centers in the nearshore countries. So that is something where I would say, of course, there was an architectural change. And when I now see how good it works out to have reusable components internally that are easily to develop against, that means that we can accelerate the development of applications based on that, because all the APIs are already there, like small Lego bricks, right? And that is a huge decrease of the time to market, which means that we can be closer to the customer needs. And of course, we see a decrease in the costs, because when you have the same services, like for persons data and documents, just two examples, but everybody knows nothing will ever happen in a bank without person or documents data. That means that we have a higher reuse of components that normally has been a need to develop them and again 50 times a year. And now we have APIs that have a wider spectrum and can be reused internally and are already there, already tested. And that is something where we see really good improvement. And of course, it means that we are able to communicate with partners and with clients via secure APIs instead of proprietary whatever protocols or service file transfer, I don't know.
And in terms of when you sort of made that decision, I guess you went out and had a look at the different API offerings on the market. Perhaps can you give us some idea of the process by which you came came to decide on the Axway Amplify API management platform? Yeah, was it an easy decision? What went on to get there?
Yeah, of course, it was not an easy decision, because opening up, I mean, the plan has always been to open up at some point of time, right? And while we focused on internal API endpoints in the first place, the plan has always been to open up at the later stage where we are now. So the focus has always been on security, because in a bank, we have to follow an API security first principle, of course. There's a high value in our data and a high trust that customer brings to us when they store their data at us, which means their bank accounts transaction, right? And when we look to the market, as it has been 5 years ago where we made this decision, the API market was pretty young, right? I mean, the API platform market has been pretty young. So of course we saw some APIs on the market, but no like gateway providers that were that big. And Apigee hasn't been acquired by Google, and MuleSoft hasn't been acquired by Salesforce at that point of time. So it was like kind of a bet which system will evolve over time. And for us, it was really important. And I think that is something where Axway is really different from several others. It was to decouple the gateway from the mid-tier services, where you have to implement some logic to communicate to the service, right? There has to be some middleware, and for some gateways, it's really integrated in the gateway so that you never get rid of whatever component. For us, flexibility has always been a high priority, and of course, operational stability. I mean, last year we saw an operational stability of 99.997% with the internal gateway. I mean, that is amazing, right? I mean, I have never seen such a high availability in an IT infrastructure, right? Because it means like about 10 minutes or something at the night. So we're 24/7 available, and that is something where I'm really happy with. So of course, but as I said, 5 years ago, it was kind of a bet, because there was not such high experience on the market with API gateways. So I think we were a little bit lucky, and of course, I think it was just a good partnership together with Axway.
Okay, and you've mentioned there that security is very, very important in the banking sector for obvious reasons. So that would have been one of the criteria maybe that helped you make the decision. And I'm right in thinking things like ease of integration maybe, and maintainability were other things that were important to you as you looked what to do?
Yeah, of course, right? I mean, that is always something you look on, but that is not like API specific. That is something you should always look on when you decide for an IT component. But in an API context was explicitly to say, well, we have to look on the security and on the loosely coupled system, so that we don't come into a situation we have kind of like a lock-in situation where we are not flexible anymore, and so on and so forth. But of course, yeah, that have been criteria as well.
Okay, and the simple end result, I'm guessing, is that you're being able to introduce lots of new banking services or upgraded whatever, just basically much more quickly than you would previously. I mean, can you give us any idea on the difference in how quickly, if that's easy to quantify, and maybe then then the number of services you're able to bring online quickly as well?
I mean, on the one hand, I have to say, we focus on making internal services available via API. And of course, in the first years, that took us a little bit of time to bring API endpoints on the gateway, and to work together with all the other departments on a RESTful design, because there might be some interpretations on what is really understandable and what could be really understood from external developers as well. And but now I can say that we are able to onboard a new API version within a week, including API design from development stage to prod environment. And when we are talking about a fix, there was something we made a video of internally last year, we are now able to provide a fix within 12 minutes from development stage to production. I think that is something that really helps us to accelerate internal processes. And of course, when we are talking about services that we have already enabled, the time to consume those services is even shorter because you can directly consume the services when the API is available. And the same is for external clients. I mean, when we talk about how it worked in the 90s, where we talked about host-to-host connections with big clients, we don't need that anymore, right? We have a developer portal, and the process to onboard an external client to access his data via API takes us less than a week by now. So, I mean, that is something where we normally talked about months, right? A big corporate wanted to access his accounts data. Oh, wow, that was like a really huge project. Now it's like a week and it's only the contract signing. And of course, to provide the credentials, but that all takes place within 1 week. So I think there we see a huge acceleration, and of course, in enabling third parties internally. Normally, when we talked about enabling a third party to talk to bank components, we were talking about a huge project to find out how we could make those services internally available. And now we have a standard procedure on the API gateway. We just enable it with our API gateway and make it internally available as an API, which then means that the internal developers can access that instead of, I don't know, a half-year project with a created MIDI or whatever within a few weeks. And I think that is really a good acceleration I see in all the different sections.
And in terms of the numbers of APIs you've developed to date, I believe it's sort of 150 plus, and that's a mixture of what you might call core capabilities and one-offs. I'm guessing the core ones are where you've got some building blocks that you can roll out across multiple different APIs, whereas the one-offs are a bit more specialized. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we have to differ here because what we saw in the beginning of the API program was that there was no plan to build APIs. So there was here a project and there a system to say we want to provide endpoints, but it was not kind of a strategic portfolio. So we said, well, if we want to make this really work, we have to work on a strategic portfolio of APIs. And we decided to choose the 150 most important banking services to make them available as API. So as I said, security services, document services, account services, person services, all the important services. And the funny thing is, in the same year, it was the 150th anniversary of the bank. So Commerzbank was 150 years old, and we said, well, we made this 150 APIs as a present to Commerzbank, and that was so stupid that everybody could remember that. And everybody wanted to take part of that and wanted to be part of that. And so there was something where we really worked on a strategic portfolio, but of course, there were some APIs where we would say there's no high reuse potential, even though it should be an API to decouple systems and so on. So we had like a strategic portfolio where we focused on 150 APIs and additional APIs where we have the people to make them work. And as we reached those 150 APIs by end of 2020, we decided to enlarge this portfolio by another 150, of course, more complex services, even more complex, and external APIs to make this strategic portfolio more and more complete. And of course, in addition, there were a lot of additional requests for API onboarding. So we are currently now talking about 800 endpoints that we have available, while about 220 of them are like on the top priority list, because we were able to not serve only the high priority APIs, but we standardized so much in the API onboarding process that it's not that much of an effort to onboard them on the API gateway. So we trained other departments to do it, like not yet really self-service mode, but we are working on that in order to help them to connect their services via API as well.
And I'm wondering, have you, your sort of ecosystem of partners, have you sort of been a bit of an evangelist? You've you started this process and lots of others. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that have you encouraged, or by what you've done, API growth has increased across your sort of partner ecosystem as a result as well, which presumably has some benefits?
Yeah, I mean, of course, but as I said, the focus has been on the internal APIs. So, and there we saw a huge increase. So while we had about, I don't know, 2.5 years ago, as I became cluster lead, so which means head of the API department, we had about 3 million API requests per month, and now we have 20 million a day. I mean, that is like, it kind of exploded there, right? With this high availability at the same time. When we're talking about the external services, that takes a while, because you need to talk to the business and say, well, here, you know, I'm the IT guy, you think I took care of your notebook yesterday, but to be honest, I'm taking care of your future business. And of course, in a bank with a history of 150 years, that takes a while, because the sales guys are not waiting for the IT guys to tell them how business is working. And that is what we worked on together with the business, to train them, to show them what will work internally. We had the proof internally, it works out, it's reliable, comes with a high availability, it's really easy to use. And now we are working more and more on business projects to make money with it. Even though we, of course, started in parallel our partner network and started to serve first customers with external API functionality. For example, wealth managers, which had to wait until that moment for the end of the month in order to get all the print-outed transactions. I mean, ridiculous. Of course, it's quite easier to access securities data for the accounts via APIs. And therefore, they are even willing to pay for that. And the same is for when we talk about corporate clients. We have a corporate client in Agiravolt, they are taking care of power for retail clients. And I think especially in the times where everything, the prices for nearly everything gets higher and higher, and we are seeing a higher inflation rate, I think I hopefully never come to the situation where my power got switched off because I didn't pay for the bill. But we now enable together with this partner a concept where you can prepaid, you can send an instant payment, like a prepaid instant payment, and then after 20 minutes, your power gets switched on again because of API. And I think that is something really that adds value to our client, because he can provide the feature, and to our client's client. And that is something where I think we see our partner network growing with cases like that, and where we really are happy to see how that works out. But of course, to come to a larger scale, we need to promote that more. We need to involve marketing and business more, and we have to have really reliable use cases that would work for nearly all the clients, right?
Okay, and you mentioned a couple of uses there. I'm also intrigued. I think you've developed one to do with data exchange, with working with your financial partners, and also I think it's helped you for, you know, I presume that's with potentially existing partners, but I know it's helped you forge some new relationships. And I think there's a company or organization called Smarva, which you've done something with. So perhaps you could share a bit more about those if you can.
Yeah, I mean, there was something where we had the situation that normally when you have this platforms where you can compare different consumer loans like Smarva or Finance Check, then you are like searching through the different interest rates. And once you find a bank, your expectation is that you can close this consumer loan, right? But it's not been the case before, because it was like on those portals, you were like seeing, oh wow, Commerzbank is offering a really interesting interest rate. Clicked on that, and then you were like redirected to Commerzbank side, which was then saying, hello, who are you? So, and that is of course a bad experience, and I don't have to tell you something about the conversion rate here, but with API integration, it's now possible to close the consumer loan while you are on the comparison portal. You don't have to go to the Commerzbank side, because we have all the process integrated in this ecosystem. And of course, are accelerating those processes continuously, because when you think of what happens normally in those processes, you're up to close the consumer loan and then searching for this one document that is missing, and you find it in the cupboard somewhere, and how do you get it now into the process? Yeah, what do? You take your smartphone, make a picture, send it by email, then download the email, upload to the portal, and then says session timeout. So we took care about this in order to accelerate the process step by step. And I think that is how iBusiness should really work, to see how the process is going, where you lose conversions, and then to improve the process step by step together with the partners. Because of course, there was a feedback from the partner, and we now found a way how to make sure that the customer can step in exactly where he lost the process.
Yeah, and in terms of the numbers, you mentioned obviously you got to the 150 mark on your 150th anniversary, then decided to develop more. I mean, do you have any idea where this will go? I mean, are we talking thousands eventually, or yeah, just some idea of how, you know, what a complete, you know, API rollout would look like?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think there's kind of a natural limit, because there will be a point of time where we enable all bank services via API, and we have to differentiate. So what we are counting are the API operations, so the different functions. And when we talk about the APIs that you will see on the portal, of course, they will include a lot of functions, and that is something we will always improve. But there we are talking about, I think, 6 or 7 external APIs are currently available on our external developer portal for consumer loans, home loans, securities accounts, customer onboarding. So, but I think there you will see more and more functionality, but I don't think there will be like thousands of APIs, because what I have to say here is it's really important to reduce the number of APIs, to make it easy to understand for the client what APIs. It should be intuitive, right? And when there are too many, it's like in the supermarket, you don't know what to buy, right? And therefore, you should try to design that as simple as possible. And that is what we're trying to do. And we engage with the Berlin Group and are working in the Berlin Group that is making like the that has done the PSD2 standards, and are looking even ahead, like and further down the road, what can be done for PSD2 Premium, for industry standard, for insurance APIs. So, and we look together with them into the same direction and are working within the Berlin Group on those standards. And I think that is something where I currently see it will be more like open economy, and financial industry will be part of that in the API spectrum. And there it's important to have not too many services that nobody understands, and to really work hard on to standardize. I mean, nobody understands when you have an internal tool that handles a saving account different from a transaction account or a securities account, because if there's a need to have additional fields or a different meaning, that's okay, but not for no reason that then there was once an internal IT system that we had to take care of, right? And therefore, I mean, that is something where I think the number of APIs will, reach something like, I think like 100 core capabilities a bank should have, but not more. And when it's come to specialties, I think that will be where the bank differs, right?
Yeah, and I'm also interested, if you're able to share anything, the project itself. I mean, did you have internally, was there any resistance? Were people a bit nervous of the way you were going to head towards this? Both from the IT, I mean, wondering the IT folk, were they curious as to, you know, how it might involve them, and just, you know, the organization more generally thinking, well, wow, this is a bit of a change. Do we, you know, are we sure we're doing the right thing?
Yeah, sure. Of course. I mean, we're talking about a change. It would be really surprisingly if there was no resistance, right? So maybe to share some insights here. So first of all, it's something new. So what do you have to do? You have to show the people that it's relevant to them. And therefore, we worked, for example, on an internal use case to show the relevance of APIs for the internal colleagues. And that was to enable the internal ticket systems via API, so that when you had like a master change that you wanted to bring to the next stage, you had to, until that moment, to click through all the 100 underlying changes each on every change in order to bring them to the next stage. And with the API, we enabled the ticket system so that you were able to just click on the master change to the next step, and was automatically processed for all the underlying changes. And things like that helped internally for the API understanding within the machine room. And in addition, we took care of a very good monitoring. Of course, this high availability has to do something with monitoring and alerting. And the more APIs have been on our gateway, the more we were able to see and to help the monitoring team of the bank to see. And we are not talking about the bank was not able to see anything before, but now was all consolidated in one view. And things like that helped a lot internally to convince the machine room, let me say. And the same we are doing on the sales and business side. And of course, with the security guys, I mean, there's the security department. We have a meeting with them twice a week. I mean, of course, we have to involve them. It's no secret thing. And that is something where I can say, don't make it too much a secret what you're doing, but share the content, share what you're doing with the people internally. So we have internally an Area 51 call, we call it, where we tell the people internally, you can just join when you're internal, what we are doing and what we did for the last 3 months. So that is something where I really believe this helps in this transformation process to get the people on board.
Okay, and maybe just as we draw to a conclusion, I guess it might be difficult for you to sort of guess, but if you hadn't gone through this process, can you imagine what the Commerzbank would be like at the moment? I mean, would you be struggling with, as you say, there's lots of digital competition arisen? Can you imagine life without APIs? I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's always hard to predict, right? What has happened if we were not there? But for sure, the speed of the development wouldn't have been that high. And when I see we have a really great retail app with a lot of functionalities that I like, for example, the CO2 calculator, which is something that we integrated via API, or the Apple Pay functionality for debit cards, I think that is something that is really adding value to the client. And it's hard to say, oh, we would have lost that many clients. I really think that would be a hard prediction to say that. But of course, the app wouldn't look that nice at the same amount of budget, right? And in times of where we have as a bank, you know, that we are in a transformation process, to always look on the budgets. I think that is something that helped us a lot in the transformation. And when we talk about maintenance of services, when you had to take care of, I don't know, hundreds of maintenance services for persons data, and now you have to take care of 3 big APIs, I think that means a lot to the maintenance work that has to be done in the background. And of course, it helps to do migration projects and to decouple systems, to offload the mainframe, or to get rid of programs on the mainframe that have been just developed there because the mainframe has been there. I mean, we all know that banks have as well legacy. And I think API was, of course, a really important part of the transformation program that we are currently going through. And we see this transformation program is quite successful, right? So, and of course, when you talk about API, you talk about automation, you talk about accessibility, you talk about acceleration of processes, reduced project time, and so on and so forth. So everything you need for a successful transformation.
Okay, and maybe finally, if folks watching this, are maybe not quite so far down the journey as you are, or even haven't started, with API, is there anything you've learned during the process, or one or two key bits of advice you'd give to people as they consider, rolling out API powered architecture?
Yeah, I mean, what I've learned is it was really a good thing that we focus on internal services first, and that we said, well, we want to make the providers and consumers internally independent from us and to provide them with self-services, to make them responsible for their own APIs. And we enabled a lot of departments to think in APIs, develop APIs, design APIs, maintain APIs, consume APIs. There was really a big learning that was really a success. Where I think we could have done better is in the sales part, because it was like really a lot trial and error to find out how a huge organization, a huge company like Commerzbank works in terms of that, how we really can convince business, how we can change the business with IT. I think that is one of the biggest transformation questions for open banking. And of course, yeah, I think there I would have done some things a little bit different or a little bit earlier. But all in all, I can say that I'm quite happy about the journey that we've gone through.
Okay, well, it's been great to chat to you, Christoph. There's been some fascinating insights. So I'm really, really grateful for your time. Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.